Okie dokie. Once again, I'll just wait for us to come online, even though it says that we're live. It doesn't tell me until I'm live. We are live. Cool. Alright, I've just got a couple of recording devices here. Just in case one doesn't work, I've got the other one. Alright. Intimacy. Okay. I have spoken about intimacy before, and for those of you that have seen it, some of this will not be new. However, in the way that I'm going to explain it, it will be new. And this is a beautiful thing. There's so many levels to understanding life and understanding self, understanding others, and ultimately our relationships. So, throughout life, all you ever do is you interact with others and you interact with yourself. But as you're interacting with others, something arises within you, and then you either decide to push it away or to pull it towards you. Okay? Awareness allows us to notice what is arising within us, what our experiences are, and what we want to do with those experiences, push them away or pull them towards us. So really all your life is about negotiating relationships. So relationships are key, and I'm constantly negotiating my relationships. Now I have relationships with two people, or two bodies in a sense. I have a relationship with myself and I have a relationship with other selves. Okay, we could call it three, and I have my relationship with life. But ultimately, when you start to get to the deeper understandings of what relationships are and the essence of what you actually are, the relationship with yourself is the relationship with life, and conversely, the relationship with others is also the relationship with life. So all we ever do is go through life negotiating relationships. The most important relationship that you need to negotiate with is the one with yourself, okay? Because you're always with yourself, no matter where you go, no matter what time of day it is, no matter who you're with, you're always with yourself. You are the common denominator in your life. So it's really good to understand this concept of relationships. When we talk about intimacy, intimacy is a really interesting concept, experience, because it has there's particular domains of intimacy that we look from a psychological perspective, but I'd like to go over those to then bring you to an understanding of the change process. Now, you might be thinking, intimacy and change, what has that got to do with anything there, Maurice? Well, I'm going to show you. Because change is the only thing that's constant, I really need to become aware of that and get good at change. I am a change agent. And as things are changing, I am moving with that change, or at least I'm aware of it. Now, because things are constantly changing, then there's a shifting from one space to another. And we can see that just from a physical perspective. I've said this many times before. You are made of 70 trillion cells, or at least that. 300 million of your cells every second expire. 300 million of your cells are created. So you're constantly in this flux of change. And if we want to look at even the video that we did last week around the I am, the one thing that doesn't change is the essence of who you are, of what you are, and that is consciousness. Everything else, which is an experience within this lifetime, comes and goes. There's a transitional approach to it. As it rises, it then falls. It's like the waves on the ocean, that sort of thing. I am the one who notices the experiences as they come and go. I am not the experience unless I place myself into the experience, and I think that that's what I am. So you've got to get good at change. You've got to understand that change is constant. So the permanent part of you, the consciousness, does not change. It is the one thing that's permanent. The non-permanent part of your life, the physical body and the mind, is the thing that is constantly changing, because we have these arisings and then we have these fallings. of life and how they happen. Okay. What has that got to do with intimacy and relationships, Maurice? Are you saying there? Okay, let's look at intimacy and I'm going to link that to change. Okay, so when we look at intimacy, there's 5 domains of intimacy. And when we talk about intimacy, it'd be interesting to see, and anyone who's going to watch this video, anyone who is watching it, can you just type in what are the elements that you associate to intimacy? You know, what is intimacy? And some of the answers that might come up might be trust, might be honesty, might be closeness, might be connection. It might be vulnerability. There might be courage. So it'll be interesting to see what arises for you when I talk about intimacy and what does that mean to you? You know, there's a sense of closeness, but to get close, I need to trust. To trust, I need some confidentiality. There's also a sense of vulnerability, and there's a confidence that I can trust you with my vulnerability. So when we pulled intimacy apart in one of our men's groups, we found that trust needs to be there, I guess there's that sense of confidentiality. There was a sense of vulnerability, and there was a sense of confidence. I need to be confident that I could trust you with my vulnerability. So there's sort of the 3 main elements that we found within some of our discussions. When we start to look at intimacy from the perspective of the domains, there's 5 domains of intimacy. And the first one is physical. Yep. Next one was emotional. We had intellectual. Hopefully that's one there. And we had experiential. And the last one was spiritual. So obviously physical, that's where, you know, you've got just the physical touch of things. I would even bring that down to potentially the 5 senses. So when you see something visually and there's an intimate moment that's shared with somebody, you know, there's a physical component out of that, even though it's just visual and I haven't physically touched, but I'm looking at the 5 senses from a physical perspective. Definitely within that there is the holding the hands, the sitting next to, you know, the arm around, just the touch on the shoulder, on the elbow, just letting you know that I'm there. There's that physical component of that. But there's also the sexual component of physical touch. And, you know, when we look at intimacy, especially with our intimate partners, this sort of is it's one of those areas that when I feel that I can fully open myself to you, there's the sexual component of the intimacy. Because it seems to be the closest, in a sense, right? For some people that might be so, for others maybe not. But that's where the sexual component fits in. It's with that physical. Now, in saying that, it's also going to fit into the emotional component. So, you know, these things do overlap. But this is probably where you're going to find the sexual component of intimacy. And, you know, for a lot of men, intimacy actually means sex. Right? Whereas from a feminine perspective, a more open, receptive perspective, it's going to hold a lot more. So, physical stuff, emotional stuff, you know, do you get me? You know, that sort of thing. Do you feel into that? I'm noticing that you're feeling this way. Can I sit with you? Can I hold space for you? So there's an emotional intimacy that we can then engage with people. Intellectual stuff, you know, we're reading the same articles, we're looking at the same stuff, I'm interested in the same things because, you know, they're giving me something. And the intellectual can be also linked to an emotional and sometimes even to spiritual. Like for me, I love my spiritual stuff. I'm sharing spiritual stuff with you. For those of you who've done the coaching with me, we sit in a really intimate space. And it's interesting, isn't it, that there's this trust and this vulnerability that you can share with me and that confidence that it remains confidential. And also that I can also become part of your repair process. I add context to your content. And so there's an intimacy that's created within that space. The experiential stuff, The experiential stuff is, when we do things. So anyone who's done coaching, we have an experience there. If you ever go like walking or hiking with a group of friends, there's an experiential intimacy that's created just within that moment. There can be emotions that come from it, and there can also be the physical component as well too. So notice how these things overlap. Yeah. The spiritual one, this, and this mightn't necessarily be, I believe in God or the universe, all that sort of stuff. Spirituality, in a sense, can be broken down to meaning and purpose. So, is there an alignment with my meaning and purpose? Are you getting me on that? Do you ask about that? Do we have conversations about that? So you'll notice that if there's any, spiritual groups or any groups that are related to meaning and purpose, that you'll have an intimate relationship within that space, and it will then transcend all of these other areas. Now, the interesting reason why I'm saying, well, this is intimacy. Intimacy is based on relationships. These are the types of domains of intimacy that I can have. I can have this with another, but I can also have this with myself, and that's the key thing. All right. So how physically intimate am I with myself? So if I go for a ride on my bike, or I go to the gym, or if I do some push-ups, I'm really starting to tap into my physicality. All right. There might even be like some sexual stuff in there around masturbation. All right. So I'm still tapping into that there too. The emotional stuff, can I hold space for myself emotionally? Can I be there for me? And there's this rupture and repair process. Intellectually, can I work through things? Can I be my own best buddy in that? The experiential stuff. Whenever I'm having an experience, I can then start to look at it and go, man, this is great. I'm really present in this moment. And definitely with my spiritual intimacy, through meditation, through connecting in with life, I'm having a really intimate life, intimate relationship with life, which then adds to my meaning and purpose. So, what has that got to do with change? It's a really good question. The thing is that, how do I put this? Everything that you do, you have a relationship with. If you want to change from one space to another, sometimes you need to let go of the relationship with the thing that you want to change and create a new relationship with something that has less harm, that's better for you, better health. It might be a partner, it might be a diet, it might be how to save money, whatever it is. But I need to move from one space to another. As I move from one space to another, I sometimes need to let go of relationships. Now, there was a study done in relation to long-term relationships of over 28 years, right? 28 years or above. And what they found was the partners that stayed in relationships for 28 years or more had a high congruency of these domains of intimacy within their relationship. Makes sense. Whereas what they found with relationships that did not last very long, very short-term relationships, there was only one or two markers on these domains. All right? So it sort of suggests that the more of these domains that I'm ticking off with my partner, or the relationship that I have with something, moving with me here, then the longer the relationship will last. Now, I took this out to a rehab just a couple of days ago. It was actually last week, on Friday. And I explained this to them from their drug. So the relationship that they had with their drug was very intimate. And in relation to their drugs, then we then went through and go, well, what's the physical intimacy that relates to your drug? Well, it's the ritual part of it. It might be if I'm sticking a needle in my arm, there's that process of it. There's the physical feelings that are also associated to it. The emotional stuff is how, do I get high? Does it take away my pain? Does it make me happy? Does it connect me to others? Does it make me smarter? Am I more focused? So see how we're starting to see that objects also we can have intimate relationships with. But it's more so what's the relationship that I have with the thing. So if there's anything in your life that you want to change, that you find it hard to change, it's because of the intimate relationship that you have with that behaviour, with that thing. And if you're hitting more than one or a couple of these domains within the relationship with the thing that you want to change, then you're actually in a long-term relationship. And it's harder to let go of a long-term relationship than it is a short-term relationship, because the reason why it's a long-term relationship is because you hit all of these markers, or most of them. So what that means is that with relationships, I can go through a grief and loss process, or I can go through a replacement process. So as I'm letting go of something, I can replace it with something else. And what we found at the rehabs was that everyone, or most people, would put all of their eggs in one basket. So the intimate relationship that they had with their drug or with a person or whatever it was, all of their eggs were in one basket. That's why they have a long-term relationship with it, because they couldn't see it from any other perspective. So if you wanted to, and for these guys, for them to let go of their drug use, they needed to create intimate relationships in these domains with other things. And this is where I said, have particular projects. Have something that physically gets you going. So maybe going to the gym, physically working on yourself, exercise, whatever it is. Okay. Emotionally, can I tap into somebody? Can I talk about this stuff with somebody? So now I've got somebody to talk to. I can gain some emotional intelligence. My intellectual stuff might actually come into that, and I can then hang out with particular circles. The experiential stuff, well, I can still hang out with people, have emotional type conversations, and do something physical. And the sexual stuff, or not the sexual stuff, the spiritual stuff, it was more so around what's my meaning and my purpose. Okay? So as I want to, and even for me, and here's a really simple example, love CC chips, absolutely love CC chips. I have curbed my eating of CC chips because it just wasn't too good for me. But I had a really good relationship with it because of what it brought to me. I love the physical stuff, there was emotional stuff there. I don't know about intellectual, but there was definitely an experiential stuff because I sit down and watch Netflix with it. And did it give me purpose and meaning? Probably not. But there was 3 of those things that were ticked off there. Now, to let go of my CC chip addiction, in a sense, I need to replace it with something. So physically, could I replace it with another food that sort of gave me the same, bite or the same texture that it was? Emotionally, could that then replace the emotions of it? And the experience, well, was I still the same having the same experiential stuff, but I changed in the medium? So that's a really simple way of looking at things there. Even for me at the moment, I'm considering, I've signed up for Cairns Half Ironman next year. It's in June. It's a big race. For me, I need to train for at least 6 months. So I need to start to look at when am I going to start my training. I need to get a coach. I'm going to invest more money into this, and time. So for me, it takes about 12 to 15 hours a week of training. That's 12 to 15 hours that I'm investing in myself, that I will need to allocate that time for and schedule it. There's a bit of discomfort around that. So at the moment, I'm not doing any training, so I'm having a pretty intimate relationship with not training. For me, I then need to come to an understanding of how can I create an intimate relationship with training, and can I see my training from hitting these domains? And as I start to do that, then I become a bit more well equipped with, well, this is the reason why I'm doing this. And I'm not letting go of sitting on the couch and sleeping in. What I'm doing is I'm replacing sleeping on the couch and sleeping in with becoming physically intimate with myself, to reaching some emotional experiences within myself. I can really get into the intellectual component of the training. The experiences that I have with myself and also others can be socially engaging. But the experience also taps into all of these. And the meaning and the purpose, it's definitely there, because when I'm training for something, I'm much more disciplined. I start to look after my body a lot more. It gives me a sense of longevity within my life, because I'm 50 now and I'm moving through the years, and they're coming their way. They're not getting, my life expectancy hasn't increased, it's probably getting less, but still enjoying it, obviously. So see how I can tap into these levels here, and this stuff will give me the reason why I want to continue with it. Okay. So what I'm saying here is that for some people, and for everyone, we're constantly in a state of change. We're moving from one space to another. Sometimes those spaces are quite easy to transition to. Other times they're not so. And I believe that the reason why they're not so is because of the type of relationship that you have with the thing that you're holding on to. The reason why we hold on to things and it's hard for us to let go of them is because of the domains of intimacy that we actually have with that thing that we're letting go. And for us to let go of it, it's huge amounts of grief and loss. Whereas if I started to replace these areas with other things, other projects, I would then find it a little bit easier, or there would be less discomfort in letting go of the old behaviour, the old patterns. So even thinking about this from your belief system about yourself, you've got an intimate relationship with your own belief system. You've had that for many, many years. You've been in a long-term relationship with your belief system. This is why it's such a challenge for people to let go of old patterns of thinking, because now they're automated. But when you look at this model, it's the intimate relationship that you have with those old patterns of thinking. And if I'm going to replace my old patterns of thinking, I need to create new patterns of thinking. And as I'm creating a new pattern of thinking, then can I create a level of intimacy with it? Something to consider. So I'm going to leave you with that. I hope that has made sense. It's quite a broad subject, but that's what I found the other day. I went, that's cool, that makes sense. No wonder it's a challenge for us to let go of old patterns. Yeah. Create new patterns, create a level of intimacy with them, and you'll have a greater opportunity of continuing to change. Consider, consider, consider. Beautiful. I look forward to looking at any comments that you've got. Send them my way. Really, really happy. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week.